Hey folks, welcome to another Adventure Survival class video. I'm going to try to keep it short today, but we got a whole new type of magic user to talk about. Today's video is going to be about the Summoner. Okay, that's a little better. I had to shut my windows. So, what is a summoner? Great question. A summoner is a special type of magic user that has formed a bond with a magical being, a magical creature called a Poco. What's a Poco? Again, good question. A Poco is this very, very rare creature that is formed entirely of magical energy. Every once in a great while, a Poco, an immortal, will form a friendship. They'll bond. And when this happens, a special friendship, the Poco then ends up changing from being an energy form to solidifying this kind of solid form for the time being. When the Poco and that being bond together, it fixes the form, and it fixes the form until the summoner develops their power. The Poco can then change and grow, so working together, the Summoner and the Poco travel through the world, navigating adventure, discovery, and danger, and the big takeaway, I would say, is it's important to remember that a Poco is not exactly a pet. They might look like an animal, but a Poco is really more like a partner than a pet. You might want to be a Summoner. So I think a character or player that might choose Summoner as a class is a character that's really fascinated with animals. Maybe they're really fascinated by high-level spells that they can use to, say, conjure a wolf that'll track a scent, or create a giant bird that they can ride upon. But those are high-level spells, which means, unless you have a recharge component, you can only use them once a day. A Summoner can call upon their Poco at any time, and the Poco will stay with them up to an hour a day. When first starting out, that number can go up, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, how do you become a Summoner? Good question. So, you need, like any class, a collective stat of 32. What else do you need? You need your backstory about how you met your Poco. One of the main things about becoming a Summoner is explaining how you met and befriended your Poco. There are a lot of different ways this could have happened, since Pocos start out as these energy beings that usually live in strange places. Maybe your character fell through a dimensional portal to this mysterious place and encountered their Poco. Both strangers in a strange land. Maybe your character and your Poco decided to work together to survive. Maybe your character accidentally freed the Poco from this forbidden tomb that they've been trapped for ages and ages, and thankful for being freed and curious about this new world that's been locked away from for so long that you and your Poco decide to team up and form a friendship. Once your backstory of the friendship is created, then the bond that you two established is established. Then the next step is to declare what type of animal your Poco starts out as. So your Poco is more energy than solid when they start, but when the friendship forms, they sort of solidify. They then must take the form of a mundane, unintelligent animal. So you're also going to need to roll stats for your Poco, so you're going to need its own individual character sheet, and the stats are rolled just like you might roll for a playable character, except that you're only going to roll the d6 twice for each stat. Okay, so congratulations, you are now a Summoner. So what do you get? Summoners are a little bit different than other classes. So, your Summoner score is your Charisma plus your Stamina. So every time one of those two stats goes up, you get something called a Poco point. Your Poco points improve your Poco. The more Poco points you use on improvement, the bigger the change is going to be. For example, you might use a Poco point to give your creature fangs, or you might use a few more Poco points to make it larger, or maybe even a few more Poco points to teach it how to cast a spell. You don't have to use all of your Poco points when you get them. You can save them, and you can save up to 6 Poco points at once. There's a Poco point chart that I can put a link to that gives examples of the scale of, 1 to 6 Poco points and what kind of improvements you can make. That might sound a little complicated, so let's walk through an example. So for instance, let's say your summoner is just starting out and they have a Poco that is a goat. So they then eat 2 soul drops, and they add 1 point to their stamina and 1 point to the charisma. They now have 2 Poco points they can use. They have a couple of options. They could say spend 1 Poco point each on smaller improvements, like let's say they want to make their goat bright green, so they change the fur of the goat to bright green, and then maybe they want their goat to have claws. They spend 1 Poco point giving their goat claws. Another option is they might use 2 Poco points on a slightly larger improvement, a bigger upgrade. So let's say they want to improve the size. They want to go from being a regular sized goat to a enlarged goat, a bigger goat. So they can use 2 Poco points doing that. They have another option where they can actually just save their Poco points. Maybe they want to do something a little bit bigger, like they want their goat to be able to breathe fire, or maybe they want to be able to teach their Poco how to actually cast a spell. So what they could do is they could then save their Poco points for the time being and not use them on any grade upgrades, and use them for something larger in the future. As a side note, you can use magical items to raise your Poco stats. However, those do not count as Poco points. If, say, your summoner gives your Poco a soul drop to raise one of their stats, it does raise the Poco stat. It does not create a Poco point for an upgrade. Just a few more kind of rules about Poco. So if your Poco is in a fight with you, so they move on the same initiative as you, but they can kind of act on their own. They'll generally do what you ask them to do. So for example, you can cast a spell, and then you can also have your Poco run up and try to bite someone who is giving you a problem. Your Poco is sturdy, but they're not indestructible. If your Poco fails a stamina check, they go back to the energy plane. They sort of dissipate, and they go back to their energy plane to recoup until your next long rest. You get a Poco for 1 hour a day, and for every point your Poco score goes up from the beginning, from there on out, you get another half hour a day where you can have your Poco stay in the material world with you and go on adventures. So that about sums it up. If your character likes animals, if your character likes spells about animals, if your character likes making friends and bonding with creatures, then Summoner might be a good class for you to choose. Poco is stronger than any high-level spell and a friend for life. That about sums everything up. I hope you had some fun. I hope you learned some things about Summoners. We are almost at the end of class videos, so if you enjoyed it, click like, click subscribe, and game on.